low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Laura, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the February 22nd issue of the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Handsome at any cost. Braden Peters, known as Clavicular, has emerged as a beacon for a group of narcissistic, status-obsessed young men. He wants to take his fixation with looks-maxing mainstream. By Joseph Bernstein. Clavicular is 6'2", weighs 180 pounds, and has a 31-inch waist. His biacromial width, basically the span of the clavicle from which the 20-year-old streamer gets his name, is 19.5 inches. He has a mid-face ratio, which is derived by dividing the distance from the pupil to the mouth by the distance between the pupils of 1.07. His chin to philtrum ratio is 2.6. According to Clavicular, these calculations make him handsome. Just not as handsome as the actor Matt Bomer. Clavicular is a looks-maxer, the first star from an online community that holds male attractiveness as the key to worldly achievement. He considers Mr. Bomer to possess the most harmonious man's face in existence, beyond even his own. That's where the bimaxillary osteotomy, also known as double jaw surgery, comes in. The streamer wants one. Because, like all looks-maxers, he believes any step toward increasing his beauty to be virtuous. But it's a certain kind of beauty. The looks-maxing community prefers people who look like Mr. Bomer, lantern-jawed, symmetrical, white. A black man who attempted to make looks-maxing content was racially harassed, Wire reported last year. Clavicular dismisses concerns that the subculture is racist as dumb. Since the age of 14, Clavicular, whose real name is Braden Peters, has injected and ingested dozens of controlled substances to ascend, looks-maxer lingo for becoming more handsome. He has a single goal in mind, and his philosophy requires him to get there as fast as possible. If most people regard self-improvement as a pleasant hike to a more attractive destination, Clavicular's version of it resembles a grim speed test on a salt flat. Clavicular's extreme methods, bizarre argot and nihilistic worldview, in which the universe is a Darwinian nightclub full of aggressive men jockeying for status, have in recent months made him a social media sensation. Uncanny clips of him mogging other men, that is, standing next to them and making them look common by comparison, and mercilessly appraising women's looks, have gone viral on TikTok and Instagram. Videos of Clavicular have become so ubiquitous on X that its head of product recently threatened, jokingly, that he would shut down the site if he saw one more. By any definition of internet celebrity in 2026, he has ascended. And yet, padding around his Airbnb on a recent morning in Tempe, Arizona, where he has been streaming in the vicinity of Arizona State University, renowned among his set for its licentious coeds, Clavicular seemed a bit worse for wear. He had slept only 3 hours the previous night. "I was slay-maxing," he said, having sexual intercourse. Clavicular was preparing to stream, which he does most days for upward of 8 hours. He's especially known for IRL streaming, going out in public and interacting with strangers in an attempt to create viral moments that can be clipped and distributed over social media. He makes more than $100,000 a month from Kick, his preferred streaming service. After a breakfast of chicken fingers, Clavicular decided on his first activity of the day: a date. These one-on-ones with female admirers had become a popular recurring feature among his young male audience for reasons Clavicular articulated with typically savage candor. People watch them because they can't get girls, he said. Everyone in the Airbnb, Clavicular, a security guard, a cameraman, a tanned Spanish looks-maxing friend, Ortiz Egregior, climbed aboard a Sprinter van. After a short ride, it stopped to pick up Mia Kirk, a 24-year-old student. Ms. Kirk was a longtime fan who identified as a looks-maxer herself. As the van sped along the highway, Ms. Kirk held her phone to her face, watching the stream even as she starred in it. "I knew you when you only had 15,000 followers," Ms. Kirk said to Clavicular. Her presence seemed to produce conflicting feelings in the famous streamer. On the one hand, Ms. Kirk was an attractive woman who demonstrated a keen interest in him. On the other hand, her use of the looks-maxing vernacular struck him as unnatural. His was a subculture for abject men hoping to change their lives, not for women, who produced many of the feelings of inadequacy behind looks-maxing in the first place. "It's a male space," Clavicular said, having earlier pronounced of Miss Kirk, "My culture is not a costume." Clavicular may have introduced looks-maxing to popular culture, but he still seemed to be working out whom exactly it was all for. The young men of the very online right have claimed Clavicular as their own, and he has given them good reason to do so. Just last month, he partied at a Miami nightclub with Nick Fuentes, the nationalist commentator, and the influencer Andrew Tate, who faces charges of rape and human trafficking, producing a kind of manosphere clout bomb. This despite Clavicular, months earlier, criticizing Mr. Tate's appearance. Not a good-looking guy by any means. In videos that spread widely online, the three men were seen chanting along to the Ye track Hail Hitler. Then there was his chronic use of a racial slur. He has been called out for it on the street during IRL streams. During one such encounter this year, Clavicular said, "It's not a racist thing, it's just a fun word to say." This month, the X account for the Office of the Undersecretary of War for Research and Engineering posted an image of a grinning soldier with the caption, "Low cortisol, locked in, lethality maxing," a sign that, at least among the social media managers of the Trump administration, Clavicular's sensibility holds sway. But Clavicular himself seems as much as anything a calculating product of a hyperactive digital culture that rewards the violation of taboo. And he's adamant that the only cause he truly cares about is his own. During a discussion of potential 2028 presidential candidates on a recent episode of the conservative podcast The Michael Knowles Show, Clavicular said he would vote for Governor Gavin Newsom of California, a Democrat, over Vice President J.D. Vance, because he preferred Mr. Newsom's looks to Mr. Vance's. "It wasn't like a political statement at all," Clavicular said later of his criticism of Mr. Vance. "I was just saying he's fat." Of late, Clavicular has begun to refer to all politics as jester, an insult in the looks-maxing community that refers to a foolish waste of time. And in a show of diplomacy, he said he met with several prominent Jewish club owners in Miami over the Heil Hitler incident. "No more politics, just mogging," he wrote on Instagram. Back in the van, Ms. Kirk asked Clavicular if he thought looks-maxing was inherently right-wing. "No," he said. "At the end of the day, I have such an influence over the movement that I could bring it in any direction I want." Eventually, the van pulled up to an aquarium. Clavicular's dates often take place in such incongruously wholesome places: Disney World, the zoo. Outside the entrance, smiling families played in the sun. "I can't believe people do these activities," Clavicular said as he looked for the ticket counter. Inside, under the eye of a docent, Clavicular petted a sturgeon. He recoiled. "It's like when you drop your phone in the toilet," he said, later excusing himself to hand sanitizer Max. He and Ms. Kirk wandered into a section called Bizarre and Beautiful. They pressed their noses up against a tank of luminescent jellyfish. But they didn't touch. Though Clavicular's aesthetic ideal is hypermasculine, he believes he is currently infertile because of testosterone replacement therapy, which can affect fertility. Earlier that day, Clavicular confessed that knowing he could have sex with a woman was in some ways better than the deed itself, which is going to gain me nothing. "It's a big time saver," he said. Back in the aquarium, asked whether she was on a date, Ms. Kirk paused to consider. "I think so," she said. Clavicular grew up in Hoboken, New Jersey, the son of a businessman and a stay-at-home mother. He didn't like high school, where he had a tough time with social cues and small talk. Though Clavicular has never been diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, he frequently refers to himself as an autist and calls his way of seeing the world a gift. And he didn't like the way he looked, which he wanted to change, fast. Shortly before his 15th birthday, he ordered testosterone off the internet. "It's like a cheat code," he remembered thinking. "Why would I not do this?" When his parents found his stash, they threw it away, sending Clavicular into a hormonal tailspin. He began to order his supplies to a post office box: steroids, fat dissolvers, biodegradable sutures. Eventually, he said his parents gave up. "They realized that there was kind of nothing they could do to stop my ascension," he said. He became a frequent poster on the forum looksmax.org, where he mastered the sensibility, a mix of 4chan slang, grievances about the unfair biological advantages held by tall and muscular men, and a touch of vulnerability, as teen boys asked other posters to rate their attractiveness as harshly as possible. In long posts filled with scientific terminology, Clavicular discussed his journey. He spent hours adjusting his image in Photoshop to see what he might look like after surgeries, to push forward his upper jaw and lengthen his legs. Sometimes he took meth to suppress his appetite. In the fall of 2024, Clavicular started at Sacred Heart University, a small Catholic school in Connecticut. According to Clavicular, several weeks into his freshman year, he came home from class to discover campus police officers turning his room upside down. As he tells it, trolls on the Looksmaxing forum had called the school to tell officials that Clavicular had steroids in his dorm, and he was expelled. Out of school, he took a restaurant job, lowering him to the status of what he called wage cuck, someone who works for a living. In his spare time, he posted videos on TikTok and started his own stream, rating other people's looks. "I never expected any of it to go viral or myself to become a public figure," he said. Then in October of last year, Clavicular appeared on the stream of Cheeser, a popular persona on Kick, to advise him about balding. "Is this okay?" Cheeser asked, pulling back his bangs to reveal a prominent widow's peak. "No," Clavicular responded. Thus began a rapid conquest of social media, including an appearance streaming with Mr. Fuentes, during which the two discussed the disenfranchised young man. They had been connected after Clavicular and another Looksmaxer insulted both Mr. Fuentes and the liberal streamer Dean Withers for being involved in politics at all. "I'm on the side of Looksmaxing, self-improvement," Clavicular said, introducing Mr. Fuentes. "You're on the side of politics. Which one is the better path to take?" Asked what he thought of Mr. Fuentes' political views, Clavicular said that he did not have an opinion. Today, 10,000 people regularly watch Clavicular's stream concurrently, some of whom are paid by Kick to clip short videos. But his influence can also be measured by the extent to which his elaborate lingo has caught on as a meme far outside the stream itself. Clavicular just cracked the code. Jester maxing at the club is officially the new meta. read the caption on one viral clip posted on X last month of clavicular dancing. It roughly translates as, "Clavicular figured out that having fun at a club is now a normal thing to do." X users have compared clavicular slang alternately to Geoffrey Chaucer's Middle English, James Joyce's Ulysses, and Nadstedt, the alienating dialect of nihilistic goons in A Clockwork Orange. Clavicular insists that his jargon isn't a put-on, that it's simply second nature after so many years as a poster. On his streams, it's sometimes a source of humor. I said, "Oh, let's start second floor maxing while we're at the mall," he said. And people in chat were just like, "You're such an idiot, dude. Just say go upstairs." Because Clavicular has made very little effort to hide his location when he goes out in public, security is a major concern. He's frequently approached by stream snipers, small content creators who hope to gain fame by appearing with the better-known streamer or by provoking him into a confrontation. In December, footage surfaced of Clavicular pointing a gun at a car of strangers who had tracked him down to what was then his residence in Miami. Also that month, Clavicular appeared to run over a man who had leaped, phone in hand and raving, onto the hood of his Cybertruck. With incidents like these in mind, Clavicular recently moved into a condo owned by his friend, the streamer Aiden Ross. Guns, drugs, misogyny, body dysmorphia. The miasma of nihilism swirling around Clavicular has made him an irresistible symbol of social decline, a freakish avatar for the hopelessly fallen, social media-addled state of the young American man. At the same time, he may simply be ahead of the curve. This month, the fashion influencer, Laura Riley, introduced High Touch, a newsletter dedicated to new aesthetic frontiers, citing her current routine of peptides, obscure supplements, and light therapies. In her announcement, Ms. Riley mentioned maxing as a once fringe pursuit that had grown to include a much broader set of consumers. That night, Clavicular had promised to host a party at the Varsity Tavern, a multi-story club in downtown Tempe, where the drinks are neon and the bartenders wear lingerie. Inside, it wasn't clear whether he had many fans exactly. At the same time, people were definitely there to see him. "On one level, he's funny," said Roger Gardner, a 21-year-old student at Arizona State University. "But on a deeper level, he's kind of a demon." The other guests had more practical reasons for being there. Hunter Thrasher, a 22-year-old UPS driver, had come with a group of friends because they thought Clavicular would draw the opposite sex. "This guy is going to pull up and attract a lot of women," Mr. Thrasher said, "and we thought we would capitalize on that." But around 11 p.m., word began to spread in the bar that Clavicular had been arrested. Mitchell Jackson, his publicist, took a hurried phone call to confirm. The Scottsdale police had taken his client into custody and would go on to charge him with 2 felonies, possession of a forged instrument and possession/use of a dangerous drug. A judge forbade him to leave the state. Mr. Jackson sensed an opportunity. "I want this to be an iconic mugshot that can be sold on T-shirts in malls," he said. The streamer had been arrested for being inside a Scottsdale bar underage with a fake ID. When the police searched him, the officers found 2 pills, an Adderall pill and an oral steroid. The police report mentioned that the manager of the bar had told the police that he had received special dispensation to have Clavicular there as a 20-year-old. The next day, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office declined to prosecute based on what it called no reasonable likelihood of conviction. Clavicular was free, which was fortunate because he had plans. On Thursday night, he walked into the New York Fashion Week show of Elena Velez, a designer known for her controversial internet micro-celebrities as models. He held his phone on the runway. Clavicular characteristically attributed his good luck with the criminal justice system to his looks. "You've just got a mog," he posted on X above a screenshot of a news headline. "Men's facial features may sway criminal sentencing," it read. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Do you back into a parking spot or back out? An exploration of what's driving a change in America's parking lots. By Stephen Kurutz. America, we often hear, is a deeply divided country. To our ideological divisions, allow me to add one of the vehicular kind, people who pull into a parking lot space versus those who back in. For decades, there were generally agreed upon standards and norms around parking. You entered a lot, saw an open spot, and pulled in, like everyone else. But in the past few years, it seems to me something has changed in our national parking lots. Perhaps you've noticed it at the supermarket or CVS. Amid all the cars that are parked head first, a seemingly increasing number have instead been backed in. These dissenters face out, like getaway drivers in a bank robbery, ready to make a clean escape. Some people, myself included, find the move annoying. William Van Tassel, the manager of driver training programs for AAA, confirmed my suspicion and said that perhaps it was because they were following AAA's updated guidelines. "We started promoting this around 2020, he said, in curriculum distributed to driving instructors at public and private driving schools throughout the United States. In general," said Mr. Van Tassel, 59, who lives in Orlando, Florida, and drives a Porsche Cayman that he indeed backs in, "it's a good idea from a safety perspective. My own theory is that reversing into a space is a response to the ambient anxiety in our society akin to privately noting the exits in a movie theater. In a nation of rampant gun violence, backing in so you can quickly get out provides a sense of security. Imminent Threat Solutions, a Texas-based company that teaches people to prevail against all threats, as its website says, recommends tactical parking, i.e. backing in, for swift evasion. Next time you park somewhere, start wargaming it, the company suggests. What if I was being chased? They advise drivers to consider. But perhaps there are more prosaic reasons, too. Some years ago, Matthew Dix, a schoolteacher in West Hartford, Connecticut, noticed that a colleague would back in each morning, despite the extra time it took her to fit between parked cars. One day, he asked her why. "She hated her job," Mr. Dix, 55, said. "She told me, 'I just want to get out of here as quickly as possible at the end of the day.'" Although Mr. Dix thought backing into a space was ridiculous, he kept an open mind, as you might if a friend said they dressed their hot dog with mayonnaise. He decided to try it for a week. "Right away, I discovered that backing up is always harder than driving forward," said Mr. Dix, who wrote a blog post in 2016 laying out his arguments, including that the narrowness of a standard parking space, 7.5 to 8.5 feet, relative to the width of a highway lane, 12 feet, makes it more dangerous to reverse into a spot. Mr. Dix also believes reversing into a spot is discourteous. Other drivers must wait while you position your car, causing congestion in busy parking lots. He concluded his study with a message for his fellow drivers. Stop backing into parking spots. It makes no sense. He has received multiple emails every month for several years from angry backer-inners making their case. Lately, I find myself doing the lazy man's version of backing into a spot. That is, finding two open spots in a line and pulling through, so I'm facing forward. This way, I don't have to back up at all. Still, like Mr. Dix, I find reversing into a spot awkward, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was a demographic profile of backer-inners, My wife suspects they're mostly men showing off. Was that true? And it seemed to me that a disproportionate number of them drove big American work trucks. But could you really peg backer inners by their vehicles? I recently drove out to the suburbs north of New York City to do a little field work. At the Ardsley Diner, in Ardsley, New York, amid all the cars in the lot parked the typical way, I watched Antonio Matteo back his maroon SUV into a space. Mr. Matteo, 49, who was picking up a breakfast order, said he found it easier to back in. I get out quickly, he explained. 18 miles north at a Home Goods in Mount Kisco, there were 38 spots in the parking lot, which was full. 5 cars, or around 13%, were backed in. They ran the gamut of make, model, and price, from a Chevrolet Trax to a Ford F-150 to a Mercedes-Benz GLK 350. The owner of the Mercedes SUV, Myrna Martinez, said that she started backing into spots around 10 years ago, for reasons she couldn't remember. It has since become a habit. When I asked why, she offered the same rationale I heard repeatedly. Convenience, Miss Martinez, 55, said. It's easier to get in and go. A profile was emerging, but it didn't seem to be shaped by gender or car make. It was more of a mindset. Backer inners, it seemed, preferred doing the harder maneuver first. They prioritized leaving a little more quickly. Some people, I discovered upon further investigation, are required to back into a space. Luke McGregor, 44, is an engineer in New Brunswick, Canada. I do a lot of work at industrial sites like power plants, refineries, he said. Our corporate policy is to back in. The idea is, if there was any reason to leave quickly, like an evacuation, everyone could get out a little faster. Mr. McGregor's 81-year-old mother, Sandra Finney, appears to back in, but she actually pulls through, as I do, because craning her neck is painful, she wrote in an email. It's much easier to drive straight out. And safer, as Mr. Van Tassel, the AAA instructor, said. He cited a 2020 study from the Journal of Transportation Research that found, among other things, that pull-in, back-out maneuver had a higher crash risk. Since pedestrians are most likely to be found walking in the major lanes, not in the parking space, it's safer to back into the area with fewer people. This was a major factor in the updated AAA recommendation, he said. So now that backing into a space is doctrine, it seems likely the practice will proliferate. But I can't bring myself to join in. And I don't fully accept the safety argument. Since 2018, new vehicles sold in the United States have been federally mandated to have backup cameras, which can assist in reversing out of a spot without plowing into someone. Mr. Dix is firmly in my camp. Indeed, it has become something of a small crusade to convince the fellow drivers in his life not to back in. Not long ago, Mr. Dix rode with a friend to Boston for a night out. We arrived, and he was pulling into a parking lot, and I saw he was lining up to back in, he said. I said, "No, what are you doing?" He tells me, "I thought we could save time, get out quicker." What are we going to save? 1 second in a day? And thus, the friend pulled in. Want to get over your exes? Put them through the shredder. On the Monday after Valentine's Day, guests celebrated not love, but the pain of heartbreak and the cathartic relief of commiseration at the X-Files party. By Alicia Hardasani Gupta. A blank check, a photograph of a former lover with his pros and cons listed on the back, an oven mitt. All this and more were headed towards a bedazzled paper shredder while a crowd cheered, "Shred it, shred it, shred it." This scene was unfolding at a party called the X-Files on the Monday after Valentine's Day at Fabric, a co-working space in the Dumbo section of Brooklyn. Dozens had gathered for a candlelit evening to get over their exes, ex-lovers, ex-bosses, ex-friends, and commiserate over the sting of heartbreak. Guests sipped cocktails called Cold Shoulder and Kiss of Death at a bar adorned with skeleton bones and sliced blood oranges and pomegranates. The vibes were equal parts Coven and Schnannigfried, and stories about horrible exes that in other settings would have killed the mood were regarded here as badges of honor. Heartbreak is misunderstood, said Sophia Kavlin, 30, who was inspired to create this event after going through a breakup and losing her grandmother in the same week. It's extremely painful, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of shame around feeling that extreme pain, as if it's not valid. What people need, she added, is a space to feel it and share it with others. The fact that the event sold out with little marketing and attracted guests like Alicia Rayner, an actress who recently appeared in The Diplomat on Netflix, seemed to affirm this assertion. I was invited by a dear friend, and at first I was like, oh, no. I met my husband when I was 20, so I have nothing to deal with, Ms. Reiner said. But when she took her 16-year-old daughter to see the Broadway play John Proctor as the villain, it brought back painful memories. From the age of 13 to 19, she said, there were so many men who were so much older than me who I had inappropriate relationships with, and I never fully dealt with it. The heartbroken, like Seda Zaidi, a 42-year-old relationship coach, came to the event armed with an ephemera of a past they wanted to purge. At the start of the evening, guests were asked to write anonymous notes to their exes and throw them in a bowl. Miss Zaidi brought a dress her ex-boyfriend, a fashion designer, had made for her. She couldn't bring herself to put it through the shredder, but it felt significant just to show it around. He didn't even get my measurements right, she said as she held it up. Under a banner that read Wall of Shame, guests posted pink sticky notes with handwritten anecdotes. The more tragic, the better. I kissed my dad's ex, one read. Dated a man who lived in an office, LOL, another read. A man named Ed, who didn't want to share any other personal details because his breakup was so recent, said reading the wall was therapeutic. You catastrophize your own life, and then you have some perspective when you learn about other people who actually had really bad breakups, he said. The event was hosted by an organization called Unsent Letter Mailbox, founded on Valentine's Day 2 years ago by Ms. Calvin while she was a student at the Parsons School of Design. She created a large wooden mailbox that she took to Washington Square Park, asking people to submit anonymous letters that they wanted to send but couldn't or haven't. In return, they could read someone else's letter from the mailbox. The central appeal of this project, she added, is that you write a letter, you get it off your chest, you read one, and you realize you are not alone. Over the past 2 years, Ms. Kavlin organized writing salons and other pop-up events. But this was Unsent Letter Mailbox's first anti-Valentine event. The evening was produced with the help of her friend Bonnie Blue Edwards, who was a guest at one of Ms. Calvin's events last year. Ms. Edwards, 37, had at the time found out her boyfriend of 2 years had been cheating on her. In their shared pain, they collaborated to bring the X-Files to life. Ms. Edwards now has a partner, and Ms. Kavlin is single. At one point in the evening, an improvisation crew called Head Shop Gorillas plucked anonymous letters from the communal bowl and turned them into stand-up prompts. Letters were read aloud, with commentators picking apart the performance. Some were sung aloud as if they were the plot of an imaginary musical. Others were read as if they were Shakespeare. Turning raw emotions into tragic comedy was the point. When you can laugh at something, you can say you're on the other side of it, Ms. Kavlin said. Then the shredding ritual began. Buoyed by the sound of the crowd's cheers, one by one, guests stepped up to the sparkly altar and dumped their materials into the shredder. Ah, the beautiful sound of shredding, said Iris Bahar, a comedian and the evening's MC. Sounds like my vibrator. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. See a museum through his eyes? He'd rather you not. For 3 generations, Bruno Gopion's family has supplied display cases to the world's top museums. What others look through, he can't look past. By Sandra E. Garcia. When most people walk into a museum or gallery, their eyes dart about the walls of corridors and halls, taking in whatever is on display. Paintings in frames, sculptures on plinths, pottery shards in vitrines. The art, in other words. They are not necessarily preoccupied with where the dust sits in the room. Bruno Gopion is not like most people. When he enters a museum, he is looking for, as he put it, an invitation to a pristine experience. Are the display cases cloudy? Is the paint on the wall chipped? Is there an exposed outlet? Is the work greeting the visitor, or is he or she left having to search for connection? Mr. Gopion, 33, is the 3rd generation of Gopion at Gopion, an Italian company that crafts display cases and exhibits for many of the world's leading museums, including the Met, the Louvre, and the National Gallery. As he sees it, if he does his job right, no one else will notice what he notices upon walking into a museum. I am figuring out always when I enter a space, what is this institution trying to tell about the history or the meaning of what they're exhibiting, Mr. Gopion said. What is it that makes a museum of art in Tokyo different than a museum in New York or Milan or Paris or London? In 1952, Mr. Gopion's paternal grandfather, Nino Gopion, opened a modest glassmaking workshop in Milan. The younger Mr. Gopion studied history and economic geography at the Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich, but his real education came from the company. He often sat on the floor of his mother's office, crawling around, then toddling around, until finally he was walking around world-class museums with his parents. They involved me in everything, even when I was a little baby, Mr. Gopion said. His father, Alessandro, took over the company in the early 1990s. I got very curious in understanding why each museum and each architect wanted to have their own details and their own different characteristics. This trained my eyes and my perception. The company continued to grow from its humble origins, picking up high-profile institutional clients from Milan to Benin into the 21st century. Britain's crown jewels are housed in a Gopion display, as are Neil Armstrong's spacesuit and a 1297 issue of the Magna Carta. But the company was jolted to a new level of prominence when it was entrusted to create a new display case to protect the Mona Lisa. In 2005, Mr. Gopion's parents brought him along to the unveiling ceremony at the Louvre. His eyes were peering at the Mona Lisa at such close range that he could see the striations of Da Vinci's brushwork. While others fawned at the masterpiece during its insertion into the display case, Bruno, then 12, was pantomiming soccer moves with a nearby security guard. It was not only a moment of celebration, but also a moment of responsibility, Mr. Gopion said of the ceremony. If I get to have this privilege to see these things and to be so near them, well, then I also have the responsibility to bring them on and protect them with everything that I've got. Years of discernment have led him to be able to quickly home in on the strengths and shortcomings of a particular institution. A beautiful collection but dusty displays is either a sign of missing fans or missing care, he said. And in each of the 2 cases, something needs to be done. In addition to a considered sightline or a crystal clear display case, Mr. Gopion loves an icy serving of oysters and his Australian Shepherd Spritz, the official Gopion mascot. When he is in New York, usually for work, he can often be found at the Grand Central Oyster Bar. Gopion's clients in the city include institutions both large the New York Public Library, and Specific, the New York Yacht Club. On the 15th floor of the New York Times building, notes from the Pentagon Papers and other ephemera from 175 years of reporting are presented behind Gompion glass. The company recently supplied 282 display cases for a splashy 2025 redesign led by Y Architecture of the Michael C. Rockefeller Wing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now, Gompion is working on another gallery renovation at the Met that will bring together art from West Asian antiquity and ancient Cyprus. Declan Keeley, the executive director of the Grolier Club, a 142-year-old bibliophile society in Manhattan, is one of the few current or former clients who spoke freely about his experiences working with Gompion. Several nonprofit and state-run institutions, including the Louvre, declined to comment, citing a desire not to be perceived as endorsing a for-profit concern. Mr. Keeley, who has worked with Mr. Gompion at the Grolier Club, and in his former capacity as director of exhibitions at the New York Public Library, described Mr. Gompion as incredibly respectful of the items he gets to protect. At the library, Mr. Keeley enlisted the Gompion Company to encase a Gutenberg Bible from 1455, the first to come to the United States, the original Winnie the Pooh, as well as a desk and chair that were used by Charles Dickens for many years. We went with Gompion because the cases, they disappear, Mr. Keeley said. What I wanted was people to have an unobstructed, close encounter with those materials as you possibly could. The downside of that is that people frequently bang their foreheads on the glass because it's almost invisible, and so you hear these bumps throughout the day. Mr. Keeley suggested that Mr. Gompion's enormous curiosity for the works that are displayed in the cases makes for better cases. He said he is absolutely devoted to ensuring that the type of case that they're making is best suited for the artifacts that you're showing. That care comes through in conversations with Mr. Gompion, which, no matter the question, have a way of bending back toward the importance of crafting a seamless encounter between art, history, and visitor. The fact that these museums in different parts of the world go through the same process, and I get to see some of them, I think that is a real privilege, Mr. Gompion said. It gets me going and motivates me to work and build for what comes next. Social Cues by Philip Glaines. I receive so many angry text messages. How can I make them stop? Sick and tired of feeling like a receptacle for others' negative emotions, a reader is desperate to stem the tide of foul-tempered texts. I receive angry texts from friends and relatives frequently, but their anger is not directed at me. They are usually ranting about something that neither of us can control. A mutual acquaintance, a governmental policy, or a bad behavior online. Still, I feel as if I am being asked to take on someone else's irritability, and I often feel like a dumping ground for their annoyance. I want to respond in a way that doesn't diminish their feelings, but also lets them know that I don't want to be involved in their anger. Any suggestions? Texter. It's not just on your phone. I see bursts of anger everywhere online. In the rightful indignation at our sorry public life, and in the noisy grievance at petty complaints. Worse, thanks to social media, comment sections, and our 24/7 digital connectedness, we also seem to have a million outlets for venting our annoyance. It's a big problem. So, what do we do about it? I am little inclined, and have less right, to police the comments of others. They're allowed to be angry. So for my peace of mind, I emulate the young parents I see snatching screens from their voracious children. I set hard limits on my screen time and use of devices, especially for social media and idle texting. Of course, many of the texts I receive are warm-hearted and kind, but those aren't usually the ones that stick with me. It's the nasty ones that get me down. Now, as for your friends' disgruntled texts, I recommend less empathy of the sort that could encourage further dumping, Oh, that must have been so annoying for you. Protect yourself. It is not necessary to respond to every grievance. Let some texts go. Change the subject when possible, and learn the art of the shrugging reply. Annoying, but not much to be done about it, right? When your friends do not receive the stimulation they seek from you, they will probably take their anger elsewhere. Invoicing for half a pair of mittens. My cousin and I took my toddler grandnephew to the park. We played for a while and then took him to a cafe for a snack. While we were wrestling with him to get him out of his winter layers, we noticed he was wearing only one mitten. We couldn't find the mate anywhere, so my cousin and I offered to replace the mittens. His parents gave us the information. Replacement cost with expedited shipping from Finland, $75. My cousin offered to split the cost with me, and she watched me place the order online, but it has been 2 months now, and she hasn't paid me. And I haven't asked. Help? Cousin. So, it's your contention that watching you place an order online created in that moment your cousin's obligation to pay. That seems odd to me. I would have sent her a note when the mittens or my credit card bill arrived. Overpriced merch received. Your share, $37.50. Send that note now and continue to use your words when you want specific things from other people. They're simpatico, I'm perplexed. My brother is in a serious relationship, and he has become close with his girlfriend's family, particularly her mother. Our family is Black and Muslim, and many of our relatives are immigrants. The issue, the girlfriend's mother makes social media posts that are anti-immigrant, Islamic, and racist. I don't understand how my brother can be friends with her. Should I bring this up with him or leave him alone? Sister. I'm sorry that anyone has to look at hateful social media posts. Still, I don't understand your endgame here. Do you want your brother to confront his girlfriend's mother or distance himself from her family, which may strain an important relationship? Or are you merely curious? I would bet that your brother isn't crazy about the mother's bigotry, but we don't choose our families, and your brother seems an unlikely candidate to change the worldview of his girlfriend's mother. As a gay man, I often have the puzzling experience of hearing people make homophobic comments in my presence while also seeming to be genuinely fond of me. Many times I say nothing. I pick my battles. Perhaps your brother is taking a similar tack. Ask him about the friendship if you're curious. But if your real aim is to express contempt for a person who is probably a fixture in your brother's life, I would leave it alone. For help with your awkward situation, send a question to socialq@nytimes.com. Modern love. You're my wife, you're my life. When my husband collapsed in our bedroom, it was the nightmare I had long feared coming true. By Stephanie Gunning. In early August, on a thickly hot and humid day, I stood in the Apple store across from the Plaza Hotel buying AirPods for my husband. The store was busy. It's always busy because it's a tourist attraction and has abundant air conditioning. I was wearing shorts and an old Batman t-shirt that used to be his. I thought I was doing fine. I was not. I floated somewhere above my body, watching a woman who looked exactly like me swipe her credit card for wireless noise-canceling headphones and thinking almost clinically, that woman sure is going through it. The salesperson asked whether I wanted the AirPods engraved. I nearly laughed. What would I have chosen? Property of NYU psychiatric unit? Please return to room 401A. My husband, Jonathan, had checked himself into the psychiatric unit 2 days earlier, terrified of what he might do if he stayed at home. On that ward, anything that you can use to harm yourself or someone else is forbidden. Shoelaces, hoodie strings, headphone cords. For Jonathan, wireless headphones weren't a luxury. They were the only form of privacy available, a small island of quiet inside the storm of his mind. We've been together as a couple since 2001, but the first time I saw him was the summer before, when I wandered into an outdoor sporting goods store during a brief and delusional period after my divorce when I believed I was a person who goes camping. I am not. I am a person who enjoys a view of the Pacific Ocean from a well-appointed hotel room. Jonathan was the boot-fitting expert. When he walked toward me, I could have sworn I heard the Pixies singing, "Here Comes Your Man." He looked like a young Gary Sinise, hazel eyes that changed color, I would later learn with his moods, and the lean body of a cyclist. But his beauty wasn't what stopped me. It was the calm he radiated, like the quiet of an old tree you lean against in the summer, shaded, steady, and safe. I bought more than $1,000 worth of camping equipment, used once, and handed him my business card. He blushed and stammered that he had a girlfriend. "Things change," I said with a shrug, and left. Things did change. The day after the 9/11 attacks, he left me a voicemail message. "I carry your card in my wallet. I think about you every day. Please call and tell me you're okay." Our first date lasted 6 hours. It started at a diner and then, when they asked us to leave, continued at a bar. On our second date, we went to see the Royal Tannenbaums, which left me so vulnerable and raw that he mistook my silence as not wanting to date him anymore. On our third, he took me on a tour of Grant's tomb on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, where he regaled me with fascinating Civil War history, and then to his favorite bar, which just happened to be in the building next to his apartment, where we kissed for the first time. On our fourth date, we went to eat Chinese food, and he talked about the heavy sadness that sometimes enveloped him, how sometimes he didn't want to die exactly, but no longer really wanted to be alive. He told me about his therapy and his medication, and offered me an out. We've always joked about that, technically. We are still on that fourth date because after dinner we climbed the 5 flights to his apartment and I didn't go home for 2 days. Since then, we've rarely been apart. We married in 2004, had our daughter in 2005, and built a life on acceptance, adoration, and a trust wide and deep enough to hold us both. He stayed in therapy. He took his meds. He had bad days and hard seasons, but never anything that took him so far from me that I doubted his return. 2 years before that day in the Apple store, Jonathan suffered a life-threatening pulmonary embolism. He made a full physical recovery, but some piece of him broke loose afterward. Instead of a cinematic new lease on life, he sank, slowly, then all at once, into a depressive spiral no amount of coffee, chocolate croissants, or pep talks could lift. He cycled through treatments, therapy, psychiatrists, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, ketamine, an intensive outpatient program that drained our savings. Nothing touched the core of his despair. And then last summer, he collapsed in our bedroom, wailing, gagging on his tears, unable to meet my eyes. He said we had to go to the hospital right away, or he was afraid he would kill me and our daughter and then himself. This was the nightmare I had both dreaded and avoided thinking about since the day we married. The day love would collide with illness so violently that I would lose him not to death, but to a locked ward. I packed him a suitcase because I knew he wouldn't be coming home. We took a lift to NYU. It seemed somehow inevitable that our long fourth date was going to end at the double doors of a psychiatric unit. When his doctors recommended electroconvulsive therapy, I flinched. Everything I knew about ECT came from the musical Next to Normal, where a suburban mother suffering from bipolar disorder undergoes the procedure, which looks terrifying and violent, and loses 19 years of memory, including any memories of her own son. But the modern version is nothing like that. It is deliberate, quiet, and suffused with care. On treatment days, he was escorted from the unit to a different floor, given medication to relax, then anesthesia. The actual procedure lasted minutes. When he moved to outpatient treatment, I accompanied him to the hospital and stayed with him for everything except the ECT itself. I asked if I could watch, but he didn't want me to. He was worried it would upset me. He himself had never seen it, and he didn't want me to have the experience of his treatment without him. His memory remained intact, save for small lapses, an appointment forgotten, a day misremembered. At night, after treatments, I would test him. "Who am I?" I would ask. "You're Stephanie," he would say, steady and sure. "You're my wife. You're my life." Slowly, he began to return. Watching Jonathan recover was like watching an Edison bulb warm and begin to glow after being dark for too long. Before he had been hunched, pale, haggard, deathly, his eyes flat and his voice high and whiny. After, his posture lifted. His eyes regained their shifting greens and golds. His skin flushed with color and his voice deepened. One night, while we were watching the Great British Bake Off, he made a joke. Something once entirely typical of him, where he started yelling at the contestants not to use matcha because Paul Hollywood, the celebrated baker, hates it. I turned to him, startled by the sound of his old humor. "Hey," I said, "you're back." Jonathan grinned at me, surprised himself. "Yeah, it's me. I'm back." We regret that we waited so long to consider ECT. The measure of last resort turned out to be his salvation. These days, he sees a therapist weekly, a psychiatrist monthly, and we both have the number for the psychiatry chair at NYU. We have the number saved in our phones, like an old good luck charm. We have abandoned shame altogether. There's nothing we don't tell each other now. No secrets scribbled in hidden away diaries, no fear held alone. His near loss to the psych ward, along with our encroaching middle age, have turned us into people who embrace joy anywhere and everywhere we find it, for however long it lasts. We gather it like fireflies, understanding that we will need to set it free if it's going to survive. The day he came home from the hospital, Jonathan handed me the AirPods, the ones I had bought during the surreal afternoon in the Apple store. "These are yours," he said. "I like the ones with wires." I never did engrave them, either with his name or his room number in the psych ward, so now they're mine. I use them when I walk the dog, when I commute, and when I need my own small island of quiet. And every night when I get home, he takes them from me without a word and plugs them in, making sure they're charging while we sleep. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 22nd issue of the New York Times Style section. Your reader has been Laura. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the USA Today. Following that, at 2 o'clock, is episode number 40 of Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, broadcasting daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Readings broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Radio Reading's website is nfradioreading.org. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555.
Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of